All right, hello everyone. You know me, Retrospect Greg. My what went wrong with what Rodimus Prime video keeps making me money. I don't know how. And with me today are two special guests from the NetherKast. You can introduce yourselves.
We could
Hi.
do that. We could do that, or we could not. All right, Razor, you go first.
Okay, so I'm Razor, from the NetherKast, one of the hosts. We do a series called The Lost, where we do like character bio videos for individual characters. We talk about their history throughout the series. We do Let's Plays now, so we've been playing through the MK games.
Yes, just recently did MKX.
Indeed, it's actually funny, like us only playing this now after 10 years on the Nethercast. It's kind of a coming full circle deal because this is where we came in. This is where we started the Nethercast during MKX's original lifespan, and here we are. And I don't really play MK that much these days, except for the old games. I just sit around and listen to old Cure records and cry.
I would love to. I would love to play the old MK games, but Warner Brothers does not make them readily available.
Well,
Army Hardies, I have a
yeah,
solution for you.
we've unabashedly resorted to some piracy to do the 3D era ones.
I mean, for
I
me,
did-
it's not piracy because
Yeah,
like,
I
I
did-
legally own these games 10
Yeah,
times.
yeah, that's
over.
actually like if you own the games, which I actually own 3 copies of Deception. I have it for the PlayStation, the GameCube, and Unchained on the PSP.
Yeah, but you
Problem is, the only one of those 3 consoles that still works is the GameCube, because Nintendo built those things to be run over by a car and still work.
Yeah. Say what you will about Nintendo, but they make dirt. I think there's a Game Boy that still works, even though it was bombed.
There is. It's in a museum.
Oh man. Well, anyways, so I guess we'll start. How did you guys become fans of MK? I guess I'll start with my story. My sister and I we rented a game for Sega Genesis, which was Mortal Kombat 2. I picked Scorpion, she picked Katana, and that's how those two became my favorite characters.
Well, I guess I got my start like I was in like 4th or 5th grade, and I saw like screenshots of Mortal Kombat 2 in like an EGM or GamePro, and it had a whole like a full fold out thing of all the fatalities.
Oh, yeah.
And it was, I guess, the first time I'd really seen like realistic gore in a video game. So I was like fascinated with that, and also the colorful characters. The fact that there were a bunch of ninjas in it, and this was the same time that Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers were around. So multicolored matching ninjas, palette swap characters was the thing at the time.
It was the zeitgeist.
If you were a kid, that's what you were into.
Oh, yeah. That 90s was the best time to be a kid. I'll stand by that.
Easily.
So yeah, so I had to know more, and I couldn't get to the mall arcade very often, so I ended up buying Mortal Kombat 1 for the SNES. Which say what you will about the sweat and the censored fatalities, but I still think Raiden's Super Nintendo finisher is better than the real one.
What does he do again?
He turns you in a
Yeah,
pile
he
of
zaps
dust
you.
with a skull on it instead of like the original was he would just zap you until your head exploded.
Ah,
In the SNES one, he channels electricity through you, and like you kind of disintegrate into dust from the feet upwards, and the whole pile of dust collapses, and the skull collapses on top of it. It's a very nice touch.
yeah.
Like making it PG-13 actually rendered it more effective to watch. Less bloody, but cooler and more unique.
Also, an interesting thing is that Super Nintendo MK1 is actually the first time Sub-Zero did the freeze you and then shatter you.
Yeah. What was
The,
Scorpion?
the fun thing about that fatality is that you still had to do it at the same distance as the head rip because they poured some of the code over. But like all the magazines at the time when they showed it, like because what he does is he jumps backwards after you do the command close range, and then he freezes you, then he jumps in again, and then he shatters you.
Yeah, he does like
looking.
He does like the Bruce Lee back fist instead of an uppercut.
Yeah.
Oh.
But looking at all the game magazines, they all just showed screenshots of him freezing at full distance. So I distinctly remember not being able to get that fatality off for like 2 weeks after everyone else's I'd been able to do. Because I was doing it full screen distance.
Hey, Hector. No. By the way, if you hear me say something about Hector, that it usually means my cat is acting up. Because whenever I'm on the computer, he likes to try to take attention away from my computer to him.
As cats do, as they should.
They do.
as
They do
always
that.
will.
Cats will one day be our future lords and masters. We need to accept that.
One day, he says, as if they aren't already.
Been that way since ancient Egypt, my friend.
All right. Shane, how'd you start?
Shade? It's Shad, man.
Stat.
Yes,
Stat.
there is no E in the end. It's Shad.
You've been in our
Sorry.
Discord for years. You've seen my name a million times.
I've seen your name, but I've never pronounced it.
It's Shad for the record. It used to be short for Shadowloo Soldier. Now it's short for Shadow Priest.
Okay.
It's just, I don't know. I might change it to Bobby Braun, Weep and Ninny Bong, or the artist formerly known as Shad one of these days. I'm fickle like that. But I actually don't remember whether I was probably aware of Mortal Kombat before MK2 came out because of like news reports and violence and things like that, and it was kind of on everyone's lips. But the first time I ever played the game was MK2. My local video store had a machine not arcade, video store, and like within a week of watching older players like learn the moves and do the fatalities, I was like one of the best people at that arcade, and I started winning tournaments here and there, and I've been into it since arcade MK2, let's just put it that way. And I was there on like day one for Mortal Kombat 3's arcade release.
Yeah. I know someone who was there when Mortal Kombat 2 arcade first came out. He said there was a huge crowd, and like he was watching people play as Jax and Baraka fighting each other.
Whenever I would go to arcades around that time, like they were always pretty packed, and I did most of my practicing on like at this one video store, this like scrawny little 12-year-old kid just doing moves all on his lonesome because like there was no one around. Like the borough is like this dead area, but somehow they managed to get a machine in, and I got really good at it to the point where I was at some point able to beat the game using katana on a single quarter.
I can't even do that.
I might be able to still do it with katana today. Probably absolutely no one else.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever gotten past Shang in the arcade.
See, the trick is everyone's like,
MK2.
the trick is like everyone's like it's too hard, it's too difficult. You know, you have to tone the difficulty down. No, you don't tone the difficulty down. You tone it up. Because the harder an old school MK game gets, the more reactive the AI is until they're jumping at you after you jump back every single time.
Yeah,
But
see, I
making it
used
harder
to,
makes it dumber.
Because
Like-
that's how I always beat Kentaro. Just as soon as he did his teleport, I'd jump up kick. That was what I would do.
See, the last time I played, which was a few years ago at a movie theater, I was trying to get it into the rhythm of the chase my back jump so that I can kick you, and it started like defying me, you know? It wasn't following the pattern that it was supposed to.
The last time I think I played was maybe a year or so ago, a year or 2 years maybe. I was really drunk. It was a friend's party, and we were like at a local like retro arcade thing. And I was like, "Hey, it's MK2. I've got 5 beers in me and a roll of quarters in my pocket. Let's see how much it takes me to do this." And I think it was like $1.25 or 75 maybe. I beat it with Liu Kang
Oh yeah.
after switching characters like so many times.
Yeah. Well, reminds me. I do have I'm working on the finale of my Ganon character video. I actually have a Scorpion character video like that's mostly written, but unfortunately, I lost most of the original footage I recorded for the MK arcade games, and well, you know, actually finding a good way to emulate those games has not been easy.
I mean, I'll pass you a copy of MAME and the I'm sure that you legally own the ROM, so you know.
Oh yeah. Well, MK4 is still kind of tricky because
Well, MK4 can't be emulated properly to this day. It's not possible.
yeah.
It runs on hardware which does not have widely available documentation and coding for it to put it the way that one developer said when looking at the source code. It's kind of like trying to dig upwards in blackness or something like that. Like you're flying blind. Like you can't really reverse engineer it because you don't know what the hell you're reverse engineering it.
Yeah.
Like MK4 is they're close, I think, but like they still have a long way to go, probably years.
Okay. Well,
So we'll never sadly play War Gods ever again either.
yeah. Midway made their own custom engine for their jump to 3D, and those are the only 2 games they made in it.
yeah, this is why Midway kind of went bankrupt. They made dumb decisions.
Well, back in the day, you couldn't just just give me a copy of Unreal. We didn't have that kind of sharing of engines yet.
They had nothing else was the problem, you know?
Yeah.
By the end of it, Mortal Kombat was basically the only thing keeping them floating.
Yeah, well, like you said in the Discord, I think, they would spend the money they made off a Mortal Kombat game on some new game that flopped.
Credit for trying.
Well,
Man, I actually remember having fun with War Gods in the arcade a little bit.
yeah. I actually went to a convention earlier this year. They actually had arcade stands of the first 4 games. It was like, wow, I've never seen MK4 arcade before.
We had MK4 in my neighborhood for, I think, a couple of months. I played it, I don't know, 2 months on and off, but like no one was on it. MK4 did not sell well. It bombed. It was a flop, and everyone I knew, and all the kids at the arcade I didn't know, were off like forming queues around the X-Men versus Street Fighter cabinet.
Oh yeah, I think at that point MK was seen as old news.
It was on its way out, man. 1997 and through 1999, those were like the dark years, you know?
Oh yeah. If MK4 had been the last MK game, I guess it would have been okay. I mean, considering, I guess it would have been a decent ending if it was.
It would have been a terrible ending, but I do think that there were, I was expecting MK5 one day. I was expecting MK5 for like a good year and a half, and like.
Speaking of which, I think it's funny. I always looked at what John Tobias had planned for MK5. The main character was going to be Liu Kang Katana's son, I believe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Liu Kang would be dead, and apparently, I think Reiko was going to be Shao Kahn's reincarnation or something.
That is the original plan for Reiko, yes.
Yeah. Some of that is just like stuff that was intended to be set up in MK4, like Reiko has an ending where he sits on a throne and puts on Shao Kahn's helmet, and everybody's like, but what does that mean, though?
Yeah, well...
Then you had the Game Boy ending, which was like, and now he can come back and take his rightful place to ruling the lands he once did again. Like,
yeah. Well, because the Game Boy, the people who wrote that ending, they didn't know what the ending meant exactly, so they just interpreted how they saw.
They were on the money. They were, for the time.
Yeah. Well... it's funny. I wonder if Tobias had ever gotten to make his MK5, maybe MK wouldn't have needed to reboot twice.
I don't know, because like the thing of it is, like, although I could have been satisfied if 4 was the end, like mentally at that age, I was prepared to accept it. But now, like, then Deadly Alliance and Deception did come out, and I honestly think those are my 2 favorite Mortal Kombat games, especially because of the story.
Yeah.
And the reason Mortal Kombat rebooted isn't because it quote unquote needed to reboot, although Armageddon was a difficult corner to write oneself out of, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
They did not need to do that. There was no reason to put themselves in that position.
Well, apparently that was all Ed's idea, right?
Yeah. The plan was, we have too many characters. We don't even like half of them. This guy didn't work. She didn't work. Let's just murder everyone and start over again.
Yeah, but you don't need to murder everyone and pull time travel. You could just murder half of them and keep going.
Weren't most of those characters dead anyway?
A significant chunk of them were raised from the Nether Realm, yes.
Yeah, pretty much.
But the thing is, the reason Mortal Kombat 9 is the actual reason 9 is a reboot is because it was shortly after 2 things had come out. One of them was Street Fighter 4, which after seeing that and seeing all the it looks like Street Fighter 2 but in 3D. The roster is basically Street Fighter 2 but more characters. Ed saw that and he's like, well, going back to 2D is what's in, retro stuff is what's in, nostalgia is what's in. They made Street Fighter 2 again, why don't we make Mortal Kombat 1 through 3 again? And then the actual the rate and time message changing history stuff that was influenced by the second thing, which is Ed had just seen the Star Trek reboot with Chris Pine and Zach Quinto, the J.J. Abrams, and that's basically the long and the short of it. Ed is very influenced by movies he's seen recently.
Yeah, I think
which probably explains a lot of the current MCU influence on the current games.
I'm pretty sure Ed just sees a movie and goes, let's do that.
Yeah. I mean, the Cyber Ninjas were already Iron Man in 9X and 11. Why did you need to go, they're not Iron Man enough, make them more Iron Man?
Yeah. Or
it's not enough that they look like Iron Man now. Let's actually make them people in armor.
I want to steal the inside the helmet camera close-ups. Come on.
Shot for shot. Let's do this Obadiah Stane moment.
And he basically made Tanya. They basically made Tanya into what's her name from the Black Panther movie.
Oh yeah, the whole concept of the Umgadi is straight ripped out of Black Panther.
It's the Dora Milaje. That's all it is.
Yeah. It's embarrassing how little they changed when they stole it. Like, if you're gonna copy my homework, you have to do things a little different so the teacher doesn't catch you. Come on.
Well,
I'm not unconvinced. I'm still not unconvinced to this day that MK12 didn't start its life as Injustice 3, and the reason Shao Kahn looks like that was that they were halfway through developing Steppenwolf or wherever the fuck.
See, I hope that's not true, just because it would be real embarrassing to have Steppenwolf in your fighting game this many years after Justice League came out. It's already passed. That is out of the zeitgeist. You can't... Nobody wants Steppenwolf, man.
Yeah.
You're not down with the Steppenwolf?
I could go on a magic carpet ride, but...
There are two wolves inside you. One is Steppen, and the other is Bayo. This is how you become a man.
Speaking of Injustice 3, I'm hearing that may or may not happen because, I wouldn't be surprised if since, DC's wisely moving away from what if Superman went bad takes, and since Injustice's whole universe is built on that, I can imagine they don't.
Well, the convenient thing with Injustice is that the premise is also built on multiverse shit, so they could just have another Earth.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have to, you could start with evil Superman, and whichever ending of 2 you want to go with, they'll probably pick the one where he's Brainiac Batman to be his slave or whatever. That's probably easier to write from, and then just have another Earth invades.
Yeah, but at the same time, Kevin Conroy's gone now, and I don't know if you can really recast him.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Batman, somebody's got to play him. He's a timeless character.
I know, but
it hurts. It's a pain that's for our generation. It feels like.
Yeah, but
it feels like our version of that character is kind of dead and gone, and all we have left is the Jonkler.
I would say, I think that if anything is going to cancel Injustice 3, it's that Warner Brothers keeps trying to buy and sell their entire company off. So we'll see if they even own NetherRealm Studios in 5 years.
Yeah, well, that's why they made this MK12 instead of Injustice 3, or so I've been told.
Well, so Ed talked about this at the Game Awards or wherever it was that 12 was revealed for the first time. Somebody interviewed Ed on camera, and he said that the reason Injustice wasn't the next game is because they started building it out, and Injustice 3 is going to be their first Unreal Engine 5 game. And at some point they realized it's going to take us 7 years to make a game because this is our first time working with Unreal Engine 5. So we need something to fill the gap. So MK12 is shovelware, so you don't notice how long it takes Injustice to come out. That's why so much of 12 looks like reused assets from 11.
Mortal Kombat? Reuse assets? Never!
actor.
I also think that's why, like, all of the guests in Pack 1 were superhero guys, because they wrote those contracts up to have them be an Injustice, and then they decided their next game wasn't going to be Injustice, but they still had the contracts.
There's
Well,
too many
what I find
weird
funny-
quasi similarities between like the world of comic book superheroes and MK12 to really ignore, you know?
Yeah.
I'm only half joking when I say I think it started out as Injustice 3.
I just... Yeah, Deadpool was right. Everybody's done with this multiverse shit. Can we just wrap this up and go
I
back
think-
to, like, Liu Kang is a monk and Raiden is a god and they're fighting on Shang Tsung's island in a tournament? Come on.
Only.
Well, see, that's the thing about MK12's story. I think at the beginning when it's actually just the martial arts, I maintain it's not that bad. But then when the multiverse shit starts, that's where it's like, yeah, all right.
Well,
I was
I don't know.
following along with it. I'm not sure exactly when it was that they really started to lose me. I think it was like when they had like that racist ghost like scare Quan Chi white.
he sucks the
I
melanin
think,
out of him.
I think that was the moment where I was like, what am I actually fucking watching?
You know, I don't.
All of this is dumb.
I mean, that is a big problem. The whole game is like origin stories for things that didn't need origin stories.
Well, that's not how Quan Chi got that in the original timeline.
No, in the original timeline, he's an Oni from the Nether Realm, and he just looks white when he makes his human form, because everything that his magic touches kind of comes out black and white, like Serena's hair, and Sindel's hair, and Reiko's hair.
It's spooky
Those are
death
all
magic.
people who've been, like, necromancied or transformed by Quan Chi. That's just what shit he does looks like.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about MK9 real quick. What went wrong with that? Because, you know, the whole premise is Raiden has a vaguely defined vision from the future. And it's like, you know, he has to change something, but he doesn't know what it is. And it's, you know, he just makes really stupid decisions the whole game.
I mean,
Just
like,
to be really clear, when we say about the problem with MK9 is we are just talking about its story. MK9
Yeah, no,
is
I
a
actually
fucking
like
fantastic
gameplay-wise.
game.
Gameplay-wise, I think 9 plays the best.
It
Of all
I
like,
think unarguably does.
I know,
like
the competitive balance could use another patch or two. Like, Cabal and Cyrax are still broken.
put Cabal, it's what happens.
But yeah, like just the feel of the controls and the fact that like the characters' move sets don't have any variation gimmicks locking off some of the special moves you want to use. Like if I play Kenshi in MKX, all of his Deadly Alliance moves are one thing, and the telekinetic flurry is another thing. So I can't actually have them both at the same time.
Before we start talking about how like MKX through 12 have like sliced characters' movesets into itty bitty pieces and sparse them around everywhere.
Yeah.
Let's like focusing on MK9, like outside of the story and a couple of the characters, I got no problems with that game.
No, I agree.
Like a couple of characters' costumes, I should actually say.
Well,
I got no problem with the rosters apart from Freddy and Kratos, obviously.
yeah. Actually, where I think it started to go wrong, I think, was when they did that whole, they killed half the roster and turned them into revenants, because it was like,
Well, yeah.
I mean, there are. Look, we recently did a Let's Play of 9 Story Mode where I point out every single thing I don't like chapter by chapter as we're going through it. And
yeah.
like it does escalate and it does get at its worst when everybody dies. And the even worse moment is after that, where Raiden is like, Quan Chi, if you'll switch sides, you can have the souls of my fighters.
After
Yeah,
they
that's
died.
the cardinal sin is just the
Like-
way they write Raiden. It's such a terrible shame.
No,
First of all, he's not asking permission. Like, how do Johnny and Sonya feel about the guy that they trust just trying to like make sure that when they die they'll go to hell for eternity?
They have no dialogue regarding this at all.
No, they
have
never
no
hear
say,
that
no
it happened.
opinion.
None of
no, like, here's the thing. I think if they had heard that, I wouldn't have wanted to be anywhere near Raiden after that.
yeah.
It's one of the reasons why, like, I really dig MKX's treatment of Raiden, because, like, he knows he's fucked up, and he's fucked up a lot, and he feels bad about it, as he should. He's repentant.
Yeah, but
that's what he
he
did,
doesn't
but,
really succeed at repenting. Like, he doesn't like make anything better. He's just there.
no, but it's the thought that counts. He knows he messed up, and I'm happy for that.
I'm
That
just
means that
saying,
they
like,
know that they messed up.
if I was like recruited by like a god to save the world, and then I found out that god tried to like screw where I go when I die, you're not the leader anymore. We're voting in a new leader. You're out, buddy.
Yeah, actually, I think that was no. He tries to defend it by saying they would agree, and I was like, "How do you know that, Raiden?"
I
feel
certainly wouldn't
certain-
agree. Liu Kang makes it pretty clear that he didn't agree to go to hell.
List of people. Okay, I can give you one word that contravenes they would agree, and that word is Jax. Okay, do you honestly see Jax going, "Sure, sell my soul to the devil"? No, I
The other
feel like Cabal. Maybe he's crazy like that.
Oh,
But like,
Cabal's already going to hell, I'm sure.
Yeah,
sure, let's do it. What the hell? I'm game. Cabal. If the dog was Cabal, would agree. Maybe, just maybe. But like Jax as a person, I truly believe would have tons of problems with that. Fucking hell, man! Don't speak for me. This is my immortal soul we're talking about here.
Quan Chi, if you'll help me defeat the forces of Shao Kahn, you can have Cabal when he dies.
well, that's
Deal.
the thing that always bugged me about that was like Shao Kahn. It's like he has no dominion over that. He shouldn't be.
Yeah,
able...
like they say that Raiden's deal doesn't work because Khan has already given Quan Chi those souls. But how did Khan get them? He wasn't in the room. The merger isn't finished yet. He's still in Outworld.
God.
no,
Is
and
this
also
what we
they
brought
kinda
us here
ignore-
for, to suffer more, talking about the same horrible shit we've been complaining about for the last 15 odd years?
I don't think it'll ever end, sir. I think this is just life.
I just want to put it behind me, man.
You can't put it behind you until they start making good MK again. It's not up to us.
Yes, I can. You know how I do that? I concentrate on talking about the games I actually like and enjoy that haven't committed multiple fucking offenses against my sensibilities.
Well, look, I've been throwing the pitch out there. I'll do it again. What if we stop covering Mortal Kombat on YouTube and we start like a Kamen Rider channel or something?
Fucking works for me at this rate.
We can talk about something I actually like.
All right. Well, what I wanted to say was, what I think they did learn from that mistake of killing off most of your characters like that, because they never did anything like that again.
Oh yeah, they definitely learned from that mistake. Others have yet to be avoided in future media. I would say they've avoided it to the point that they went a little too far. Like, nobody dies in 12 except Sindel, and as a result, the threat in that game feels incredibly low stakes, and I'm honestly like confused about like what makes certain characters even bad guys.
Yeah.
Like, you have to kill a couple of people, and you also have to make their deaths count for something, which is what, like, I think was one of the initial reasons that they did this in the first place, was that for a long, long time, the joke was that nobody ever dies in Mortal Kombat, or like death is meaningless in Mortal Kombat. And they wanted to like really shake that up and just murder a whole bunch of people and say, hey, these guys are revenants now. So much for death not mattering. They're going to be around and they're dead and they're evil. Real consequences for death.
And everyone was
and
like,
it kind of backfired a little bit.
Nobody wanted that.
Nope.
oh, no,
like,
yeah.
Here's the thing. There've always been like little bits of consequences. Like Scorpion in the very first game is already undead. So we've established at the very beginning of the franchise that people can come back from the afterlife under certain circumstances. But Scorpion is somewhat transformed from what he was like when he was alive. You know, he's got white eyes and fire powers, and he sometimes has to do what Quan Chi tells him to do and stuff like that. Like, Noob Saibot is obviously quite different from Sub-Zero, but like, those guys were already shady when they died. Their personalities haven't changed. The problem isn't that everybody died. The problem is that everybody's under mind control.
Yeah.
Well, you also got to think of like stuff like original Johnny dying, coming back, and like Kung Lao dying, but it turns out he actually faked his death and he came back and he was all right after all.
Oh yeah, there's plenty
everyone's
of deaths
happy, and
that meant nothing. Plenty of people came back just the way
Yeah.
they were.
I think that's what they were trying to shift away from.
I just think the problem is the thing that everybody kind of narratively rejected is the alignment switch for a bunch of good guys. Like, and I kind of feel the same way about 12 being an alignment switch. Like they took a bunch of normally bad guy characters and they've made them good because it's a new universe and they're more sympathetic because Liu Kang like crafted them to be, because he wants everything to be more peaceful and touchy-feely. And it's like, I don't think I like Reptile this way. I know there are people who do, but this is a different character for me.
I feel the
And
same way
he's
about
kind of
Melina.
boring.
I don't like Melina as a good guy.
Yeah.
You gotta like, I mean, it's not for, again, it's not for us, you know, it's for that entire generation of Twitter fans who just scream Melina at Ed in all caps over and over because of the loudest.
But wasn't
voices
the
are what
thing
kept
they
most
liked
attention.
about Melina the fact that she's like a
bad girl?
Yeah, that's part of her appeal. I think
you're that-
even
when
they
you-
would agree that the new Melina is kind of boring compared to the one in like 9 and X.
Yeah.
You know, when you're that age, the age that, like, you know, I must say your teenage years or early 20s, like, you get into characters because it's like they strike a chord with you and like they make you feel something. And, you know, every teenager who's growing up feels like, oh, I'm a monster on the inside and no one loves me and it's not my fault, you know, but I'm, you know, drama llama. And I can see how it would be really easy for like Melina to strike that chord with people. Because I used to run around dressed in a snakeskin trench coat with silver spray painted hair. Problem is, holding a large sword and running around with it is kind of illegal in these parts. But you get my drift.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Canada doesn't let you do anything cool.
It sucks up here, man. It sucks ass up here.
Yeah, Canada is very strict with their laws.
We don't have the gun violence problem you guys do, so I'll take it.
Yeah.
But sorry.
Touche. Well, okay, another point. So the thing was, it was like, you know, they did things like they turned Sub-Zero into a robot, and it was like everyone knew that, like the whole Revenants thing. It was like, you know, you turned a lot of the fan favorites into the Revenants, and it was like the thing I liked about Scorpion was that, you know, Scorpion being undead, that was what made him unique from the rest of the cast.
There is that.
It made him stand out. Like, the only undead characters you need in MK are Scorpion and Noob.
I think that there was like the hint of a good idea in like knowing, like when they made MK 1, 2, and 3, they didn't know what 4 would be. Like they made Trilogy knowing what 4 would be, so there are teases in the endings there.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like they were making things up as they went along. And so like Shinnok and the Forces of Hell being the next thing wasn't like planned for as well as it maybe could have been.
Oh yeah. I
definitely see like the appeal of knowing, okay, after Shao Kahn, these guys are going to have to fight the forces of the undead. So how do we give this guy an interesting army of undead full of like characters where there's some emotion, knowing, hey, I knew that guy when he was alive and now he's undead and I have to fight him. That's scary. You know, like one of my favorite stories in DC Comics is Blackest Night, which is about a bunch of superheroes being brought back from the dead under the control of a necromancy-based villain. So, like, there's definitely an idea there. I just think they chose too many of the wrong characters to apply it to. Like, if I was writing MK9, I think the first thing I do is go, well, what about all the bad guys? Like, these guys that we know are going to be defeated, shouldn't some of them die? Like, shouldn't Baraka be a Revenant? Shouldn't Reptile be a Revenant? Like,
Melina.
Yeah, Melina dies in the original MK2 and is, for all intents and purposes, a Revenant in Trilogy and 4. But like none of the bad guys die in 9 except Motaro, and he's nowhere to be found in MKX, is he?
Oh god.
Quan Chi did not want Motaro.
I'm sure he's in the background pulling a trailer or
Well,
something.
actually, MKX wasn't there something in the background that suggested Quan Chi was trying to make Shao Kahn a revenant or something?
Yeah,
Yep.
in his like library stage, there's a revenant growing out of that pool of blood. Like we see in story mode that the pool of blood is how he makes them because he tries to turn Johnny into a revenant, but they save Johnny's life.
Yeah.
And when you're actually playing a fight in that stage, there's a revenant growing out of the pool that never quite finishes. Like it never gets skin. It's like stuck with just muscle and glowing veins. And it's much larger than a normal person.
And
And
Shao
also-
Kahn's armor is also sitting in a
Yeah,
trophy case in that
Quan Chi
room.
has like a collection of Khan's armor and his hammer. So it's like, it implies that Quan is trying to raise Shao Kahn from the dead, but maybe he can't do it because he doesn't actually have Shao Kahn's soul, because the Elder Gods took that away when it killed him at the end of the game.
Oh, actually,
And it was in Quan Chi's 9 ending too, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Like,
in
the
Quan Chi's
first idea
MK9,
of that.
in his arcade ending, he successfully raises Shao Kahn as a revenant. But that's arcade
like,
endings where
it's
the
an
idea
arcade-
is
It's an
like-
arcade ending, but the thing is, they clearly had it on their minds for a little while. Like, this is probably something that Shard and Vogel wanted to do. Maybe Vogel.
I think they wanted to tease the idea that Quan would like to have Shao Kahn, but I don't think that was ever planned to have him succeed. Because the thing with arcade endings is the premise is like, what if you beat Shao Kahn at a tournament? What if you were the one who killed him? What would you do next?
yeah.
I think they tossed it around for a little while, but just couldn't find any way to make it work, anywhere to fit it in.
Actually, that's what another thing I want to say. Like, Shang Tsung died in MK9.
That's true, but he was like absorbed by Khan, and like all of his souls were given to Sindel. And...
Considering all Shang Tsung did in that game story mode was lose, I'm like, how did him getting Ed Sindel make her that more powerful?
Well, I don't think it's that Shang himself made Sindel more powerful. I think it's that all the souls he had were given to her and made her more powerful.
Souls are fuel. The more of them you eat, the stronger you are. If you're into that kind of thing,
It's also it's just kind of
yeah.
it's kind of a, I don't know. It's kind of a strained MacGuffin or plot device to have Sindel suddenly get a buff so she can kill everybody. Because the only reason any of that happens is they started with wanting that scene where she kills everybody, and they worked backward. How do we get there?
You know, if you had put Sindel as a sub boss back in MK3, I don't think that none of this would have happened the way she should have been.
I don't. If I was making MK3, I would not have Sindel be a sub boss. Like, she doesn't feel like bosses in Mortal Kombat are usually really tall, or
Shang Tsung in MK2. There's an ascendancy to it. Like, I would have put her before Motaro, that one really important character to the plot.
Yeah, if you did it that way.
And then Shao Kahn. That's what I mean.
Yeah. Well, actually, let's talk about MKX real quick. It's like I remember when they first unveiled it, when they were like, "Oh, it takes place 25 years later," and I was like, why didn't you just do this after Armageddon instead of doing what you did with MK9?
Yeah, I think that's just a consequence of the fact that they don't plan things. They just do the idea as it pops into their head. Like, Ed probably had some inkling. Like, in interviews after Armageddon came out, he would occasionally talk about, oh, what do we want to do for the next game? Maybe we'll have a completely new roster. The only returning characters will be Scorpion and Sub-Zero, and everybody else will be new characters. And that was...
Because he saw Street Fighter 3 cat, he was like, let's do that!
Yeah. It was never gonna happen that way. I think, Ed seems kind of flighty to me. Like, things, come into his head and then the mood passes and he moves on to something else. So, like, maybe he was thinking about that and then somebody walked in the office, hey, we've got the license to DC Comics. You guys want to do a crossover? And he's like, yeah, Yeah.
Yeah, I actually
So the idea that he had before that guy said that sentence to him, he's forgotten it already because he's on to the new thing.
yeah, I actually replayed MK versus DC to re-record it while you guys were playing it on your channel. And I was like, you know, what really kills this game is not the violence being toned down, it's just that it's so slow.
That definitely doesn't help. It has a stiffness, which was, I think, inherited from the 3D era. Like, as much as I love
It
those
absolutely
games,
was.
Yeah.
the gameplay was Deadly Alliance, Deception, and Armageddon were Ed's attempt to make a Tekken or a Soul Calibur. You know, like whatever
big
catches
things
his
at the
eye,
time.
whatever the most recent hot thing is he wants to do. That's why those games are heavily based on real-world martial arts and weapons, and the characters in Deadly Alliance sometimes have as few as 2 special moves, and nobody can jump very high, whereas in the older games, they could flip over your head.
Yeah.
He was trying to make his own Tekken. And Midway is not a Japanese developer. They don't have access to people who've been making video games at the highest level of the craft for hundreds of years. It could like share how to do it with you. Like they're located in Chicago, which is very far away from all the other people who make video games. So they're on their own. And so there's a lot of jank to the 3D era, and some of that jank continued on into MK versus DC, where like MK versus DC feels very much like an attempt to get the engine at least closer to MK2 and 3,
Yeah.
but it's still 3D, and I think
The thing I remember the most about DC is that it felt like a step back in the right direction.
yeah.
I didn't particularly enjoy the game much when it came out, but I was like, you know what? This feels more playable. This feels more like the MK I expect to be playing.
The devs have described working on it as like it helped them realize that if they went back to 2D, they could do it and it would succeed. You know, because they were already halfway there to trying to recapture the magic of like you play as Sonya and she has all of her MK3 moves. She even has the bike kickback, and it's like this feels familiar. This feels right. Some of the things around it are still pretty stiff, but
Oh yeah. Well,
we get rid of that sidestepping, and we're at most of the way there.
Well, MK animations have always been kind of stiff. Like,
yeah, that's the other like.
It's an eternal problem, yes.
yeah. But also, another thing I want to talk about, like around that time with Injustice and MKX and Injustice 2, I was like looking at it, I was like, wow, what they did to Superman and Wonder Woman in the Injustice games, they pretty much did to Liu Kang Katana in MKX, where they're like, okay, the two main heroes who should be paragons of virtue are just evil now because we like to make them interesting that way, or at least that's how I read it.
They just like their versions of twisted dark heroes.
There is something like you can see hints of these ideas creeping in, like in Deception, like Johnny Cage, Sonya, Jax, Kung Lao, and Katana all got like killed by the Deadly Alliance, and Onaga resurrected them and put them under mind control, and it only lasted for like that one game. But
it's mostly off screen, so
but it ends up being exactly what they repeat in 9, just with more people and for longer, and with gray skin and glowing veins.
Oh yeah, I think by the time MK11 came out, everybody was sick of the red things. They're like,
I will never understand why in the last revisions of that game they didn't just do different character select portraits to make the select screen look less gray and crappy, you know?
Yeah, I think some of that was a response to when X came out, people were mad that the Revenants had non-canon alive skins because they felt tricked.
Yeah.
So I think 11 is them going, fine, you don't want that, here's this.
Injustice 3 is
here's
next,
the other thing. Here's Revenants as the primaries, and it's
They
like, well, now the select screen's all gray, man.
Now they cannot win.
Yeah. Injustice 3 is next. Can't wait. I can do without Injustice. Sorry.
You know what? Even notwithstanding any of the issues I do or don't have with present NRS games, I'm not really that much of a gamer in the current climate anymore. I buy 3 games a year, and I just don't have the urge, the drive. I'm happy playing Street Fighter 6 like once every new character comes out for a couple of weeks or days, and
Yeah.
that's it, you know?
No, it's funny how
I've been playing a lot of like shooters like Fortnite, survival crafting like Valheim, anything with a co-op where you're on the multiplayer is you with a team of your friends working together. That's kind of what I'm into these days. Not
Yeah.
so
I
much
am
the competitive one-on-one.
Yeah,
I am currently enjoying the fuck out of Silent Hill 2's remake. It's actually winning me over. I didn't think it was possible, but it's really enjoyable.
okay. Well, actually, the other thing I was saying about MKX, well, the thing that always annoyed me was like, I think it's like at the end of Scorpion's chapter where they're like, oh, like Scorpion's finally gonna get to kill Quan Chi because you've wanted this for so long and you followed the series because it's like,
Yeah.
yes, it's finally gonna kill Quan Chi, but they make it like, oh, without him we can't save the remnants, and even back then I was like, wait a minute, you're telling me you in a world with magic and all that Quan Chi's your only hope?
Artificial stakes, man.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this a lot. We just recorded an episode of our MKXLP where we go through the arcade endings. And so we talk about, like, other ways the Revenants can be restored, other ways that they have been restored in other games,
Yeah.
and how, like, the artificial reasons they needed to make Scorpion look like he did a bad thing.
Yeah.
But like anyone following the series for any amount of time completely understood what Scorpion was doing, why he was doing it. No one with sense would look at him as being the bad guy in that scenario.
Yeah.
I was watching that and I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna. You're not gonna be able to reason with him right now, okay? Even if you're actually completely right, even if I take your objections at face value, even if this isn't a contrived, way to say there's no way to bring the Revenant. Quan Chi's been fucking with this man's mind since 1997 and 1998. Let him have it. He
Retroactively
deserves
long.
it.
Well, there's another point here, and it ties back into what we were just talking about before about like the trend with NRS to make things darker, have heroes like be corrupted, to do like bad guys win endings and things like that.
Yeah.
And so John Tobias, like MK1 through 4, are all very like traditional narratives, very like hero's journey stuff. The good guys win, and it's satisfying for most mainstream audiences to play a story where like to go through a fantasy narrative where the good guys win at the end. That's what makes people feel good. And there's a reason that's the norm.
Yeah.
But after 4, like you go into Deadly Alliance, and Deadly Alliance starts with Liu Kang is killed off.
Yeah, and then Deception shows that without him they couldn't win.
Yeah, it's like the bad guys win quite a lot in the 3D era. And the reason to that is mostly a reaction to at the time audiences were bored of Liu Kang, I would say. There was a lot of people in the fandom who felt that he was not as dimensional a character as he could be, and that it was sort of, they were especially sick of him winning all the time, because Liu Kang is the guy who beats the end boss in all 4 of those games. Like, he even beats Shinnok, even though he's not, like, Shinnok's not really his villain to beat. It should have gone to, like, Raiden, or to set up the next generation, it could have gone to Fujin or Kai. No, they just gave it to Liu Kang again.
Yeah,
And
well, here's the thing. In Tobias's MK5, Liu Kang was going to die anyway.
Yeah, but he was going to, like, die off screen after, like,
He was
years
going to
and
pass
years.
the torch.
And the thing is, like, 4 already sets him up as taking a step back. He has gone from the hero to the mentor. So, like, he's supposed to be the Obi-Wan, where Kai is the new hero, and then it just fell flat and they did nothing with it. So they were already trying to. And 4 has a lot of transition stuff like that. Like, Raiden kind of retires, becomes an elder god. Fujin is in his place.
Johnny's
Kano's
still making those
gone,
bad
and they
movies.
tried to replace Kano with Jarek. They tried to replace Shao Kahn with Reiko.
Yeah.
Some of those, like, I'm a big fan of Fujin. I actually like him better than I like Raiden. And I've always wanted Kai to be something, and it's just disappointing that he isn't.
I don't
But,
know if
like-
I'd say I like Fujin better than I like Raiden, but if they'd put those lines in MK11 that they initially planned about him actually being a big fan of Johnny's films, that would probably do it for me.
Well, the thing of it is, if we were talking about like TV and movie Raiden, where he's got the long silver hair and a sense
yeah.
of humor,
That's Raiden.
that's one of my favorite characters in the Mortal Kombat universe. But that Raiden has never actually existed in the games.
That's the guy we've wanted Raiden to be for 20 years.
Yeah, Raiden in the games has always been like
Stoic.
just
Stoic.
yeah, just very stiff and bland and very like Optimus Prime giving speeches in something modern where like
Well,
all caps.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, guys. We'll talk. I was going to talk. We'll talk about this a little more. Like Ed's very protective of Raiden. Like he does not let any.
Yeah, which is very bizarre because he says Scorpion's his favorite character, but he let them replace Hanzo Hazashi with Kuai Liang in the new game.
Yeah,
He's so protective of Raiden that
like you talked about it, like the reason why Dark Raiden is done away with so fast in MK11 is because Ed told Sean Kittleson, "Don't. That's not my Raiden. Get rid of him."
Yeah, why did you let them do it at the end of X if you didn't want it to be in 11?
Here's what I find funny. I was like, yeah, okay, so wait, turning Sub-Zero into a robot was okay. Turning Liu Kang, Kitana, and all those others into undead remnants was okay. Putting Sub-Zero in Scorpion's clothes was okay. But Dark Raiden, not my Raiden.
It's
Ed
hypocritical,
really
isn't it?
needs to step back from the series. He really does.
I think there comes a point, and I believe this about a lot of creators, is that they have like maybe one or two good ideas in them, and as they get older and they've done all the things they wanted to do and they sort of run out of stuff, you start to see them force it. And it's like George Lucas with the Star Wars prequels or Ridley Scott with Prometheus. Sometimes you should quit before you hit the downturn.
I mean, Ridley Scott and Prometheus, I could talk for 20 minutes. He's not as responsible for the original Alien movie as we like to believe. He directed it, but anyway.
Well, I think Ed's just bored because he's done nothing, almost nothing but MK for 30 years.
Oh yeah, that's Ed. That's
Absolutely.
The reason he loves the guest characters so much. Is it's a chance for him to work with these things that he loves that aren't Mortal Kombat. Because like Warner Brothers has NetherRealm Studios in this "you only make fighting games" box. You know, like at least back in the Midway days, even though they were going out of business, they still let him make The Grid. he got to do a new thing once in a blue moon. Like,
I do feel really bad for him because he plainly wants to make a Shaolin Monks 2 or something like that. He'd love the chance. And, you know, even if it was set in the new universe or whatever, I know, Razor, you probably wouldn't give a crap, but I'd at least be happy for him that he got to do something new and step outside of that box a little bit and be let off the leash for a while. It would be nice, and who knows if they can accomplish if they actually were allowed to try.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that reminds me. I always wonder what would have been if we had gotten that Fire and Ice game that was going to be Scorpion and Sub-Zero teaming up.
Oh, if only.
Yeah, okay, so now we'll talk real quick about like MK11, where back to what I was saying, like the pitch process. Like, what were some of the pitches before Ed Boon decided to do time travel again? It was like,
so they started with like, if you watch that interview with Sean Kittleson, like they start with a lot of like just very broad like one or two sentence ideas, like what if we did like an 80s horror thing where all the MK characters are camp counselors, you know, being attacked by like the villains or slashers or whatever. And they had another idea, which was what if the MK characters have to climb a mountain to reach some prize that's being offered by Onaga. And it was like a lot of it was like they started with ideas that were not sequels to X. They were just throwing shit out like, what, you know, let's take these properties and do something with them. They weren't thinking about it like there's a story and a continuity here. And that's the reason none of those pitches were accepted, because Ed was like, no, let's do like something that continues where X left off.
okay.
Wait,
But when they started talking about things like where X left off, one of the things Kittleson pitched was a deadly alliance, quote unquote, but it's Dark Raiden and Revenant Liu Kang. And that's the point where Ed goes, I don't really like Dark Raiden.
I
Oh,
just want
Ed.
to. I just want to highlight the fact that someone's idea was apparently get to the top of a thing and claim a prize.
Yeah, that's the
Because we
story from the
hadn't done that
Malibu
recently.
comics.
Like you said, Ed just likes to copy things.
It's also the
Well-
story of Armageddon, man.
It all, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
But I don't think that one was Ed's fault. I think Kittleson and Dom came up with that, and I'm not
Oh.
sure either of them has ever read the Malibu comics. I think it's just coincidentally familiar.
Well, you actually just mentioned Dom, so
Yeah.
we gotta talk about him now.
Well, that's the thing. When you
can we
talk
about how
about
MK should instead, I don't know, maybe bring in a MacGuffin involving a magic riddle book, because that worked once.
Well, what was
What
the
if-
other? Well, with Dom, I remember he had been around for a while. Like I think.
Okay, so the thing with talking about a story, any story in fiction, where it's like shared media that's passed through the hands of multiple creators, like comic books or video games, you have to, like, if you don't like where the story is going, you have to look at the creative team. Who is responsible for this? Who came up with these ideas? And so, like, Mortal Kombat 1, the original, the 1992, was made by basically 4 people. You had Ed Boon as programmer, you had John Tobias as the writer and artist, you had John Vogel doing background art, and you had Dan Forden as the sound guy.
Yep.
So there's only 4 people, not counting all the blue screen actors like the Pacina brothers and Ho Sung Pak and whatnot.
Yeah.
Because when you talk about who created what, Ed was involved in like the filming the actors and coming up with moves. A lot of that was done very
Spear, I know that.
Yeah, on the day in the studio, we're just trying motions in front of the green screen, what would work, what doesn't work. And so Ed says the spear is his idea. Dan Pacina says the spear was his idea. It's probably they were both there talking about it and came up with it together.
Dan Pacina is responsible for a great many things, including the theory of relativity, don't you?
Yeah, in his own head, Dan created most of Mortal Kombat.
Just to clarify, and just to be fair, if you read the Long Live Mortal Kombat novel, there are anonymous quotes from the MK2 and 1 actors where they're talking about being in conventions, and Dan's just going on talking about how he's responsible for this and he's responsible for that, and why aren't I getting any credit? And they sit there in an uncomfortable silence, but no one wants to tell him anything because he's still their friend. But privately, they really feel that because of the way primarily he's acted, he's screwed them out of a lot of opportunities.
Yeah. A lot of those MK2 actors got screwed over big time.
Well, yeah, if you look at the ones that were recast in 3, the reason that happened is because Dan talked them into suing for residuals on MK1 and 2 because they were they had signed a contract to be made into an arcade game to have their likenesses be in the arcades, and Dan felt that that contract did not include the home versions. So when the games were ported to Super Nintendo and Genesis, they should have gotten extra money for that. So they sued over it. And as a result, a lot of the guys who joined him in the lawsuit were recast in 3. And that's why Johnny Cage isn't in 3. And when he's in Trilogy, he's a different guy. It's not because, like, a lot of people, there's an urban legend out there that Johnny Cage was killed off because Pacina did an ad for another game called Bloodstorm while dressed as Johnny Cage. That's not the reason. Ed and John, he like told them he was going to do that, and they were cool with it. It was the lawsuit.
Yeah, that's one way to get yourself blacklisted.
I'm surprised his brother Carlos went on, like, not only was never cut out, he actually got a bigger job at the company and continues to make MK games to this day.
Because it's easier for your brother to go, you're being a dumbass and I want no part of this, than it is for a friend to do it.
Yeah, it is easier for your family to tell you to screw off than it is a friend.
Yeah.
But like, because clearly Carlos and Dan are still close. They appear together at conventions and stuff. That it has
yeah.
not driven a wedge between them, so he was able to navigate that with some kind of diplomacy.
Yeah. Actually, here's the thing. I actually met Dan Pacena at a convention like last year, and he was like, he was kind of doing that. He was doing what you were talking about. It was like, huh. I just kind of smiled, nod, and left. That's what I did.
Yeah. But like what I was going for when I started talking about the creators is that like you look at MK1 and there's 4 guys and only 2 of them are artists and only one of them is a writer. So who's responsible for coming up with these characters? Pretty much all John Tobias, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah, Ed was there. Ed came up with some of the moves, but he didn't write Sub-Zero's backstory. And how much does he care about it if he's not a writer and that's not his area of expertise?
Oh yeah.
He may have come up with Reptile, but John probably gave him the story.
Yeah, no.
Oh,
So
no,
Ed's idea for Reptile is just we have a yellow guy and we have a blue guy. So
Let's
I'll put a
make a
secret green guy in the game who does both their moves. And then John comes into work like he didn't tell him he was doing it. So John comes in and he's like, how do I fit this into the story? So on the sequel, he's like, okay, we're going to throw out, like, he doesn't copy Scorpion and Sub-Zero's moves. He has his own moves, and they're all Reptile themed because you named him Reptile. And here's a story about why there's a lizard man in Outworld.
And he's like, Ed, don't do this again. Don't put characters in the game without telling me. I have to do this. It's not going to happen again. Does it again with Noob Cybot.
Yeah. I promise I won't do it again. We'll work like this time. The secret characters, you'll work with me on it. And that they came up with Smoke and Jade, and then John clocked out for the day, and Ed's like he wringing his hands, and Noob Cybot's suddenly in the game.
Yeah, actually, there's a behind the scenes story where like Tobias Vogel and some of the others are like coming up with names for new characters for MK3, and they were talking about doing their last names backwards, and I think Vogel says, but then we'd have to have Noob, and that sounds kind of dumb.
Yeah, they didn't know that it was already an MK2.
Oh, Ed. Ed was a troll even before the internet was a thing, was he not?
The Twitter definitely enabled some of his worst tendencies.
Just a little bit.
His mischievous nature had a place to frolic in freedom for a while there.
So anyway, so back to MK11 where it's like it's time travel. I actually thought some of the character stuff was much better, like Liu Kang, Katana, and like they feel like themselves again, probably because that's probably Sean Kittleson.
Yeah, so the thing is, like, in terms of creative teams, like 1 through 4 is Tobias, and then Tobias left the company.
And 5 through 7 or 8 is Vogel.
Yeah, well, there's actually like a team on the 3D era games. It's John Vogel, John Greenberg,
Alexander Valentine, I think.
Valentine, yeah. And
I feel bad for those dudes because Vogel gets like 99% of the credit for those games.
Yeah, there is a question of how much is him and how much is them, because I assume the thing is we assume that Vogel did the bulk of it, because if you look at like the interviews that were filmed for the bonus disc on Deception and the bonus disc on Armageddon, there's all these like trading card videos.
Oh yeah, I missed
John Vogel is the one who talks about coming up with stories and stuff, and we also know that like Armageddon was famously released without any character bios. People were pretty pissed about that when the game launched.
And most of the endings were pretty nonsensical because you didn't have any context.
Indeed.
So Vogel ended up writing like 16 or 14 or 16 like bios, like as much as he could get done before he had to move on to working on the next game, and he released them on Armageddon's official website. So what bios we do have for that game, we know that he was doing in his off time, like as a favor to the fans. I'm not even sure if that was part of his paid job or if he was just doing it for himself.
That reminds me, I think I remember it was apparently at some point during Armageddon's development, like they were told, oh, by the way, no bios.
This game is here to kill everyone. Why are you giving them more story? Kill them.
I think it
Kill
was
them
an
now.
issue of the thing is that the game was rushed like a lot.
Oh, absolutely.
Not only was it rushed, but it's so you have to make a game faster than you've made the last two, and the roster is the biggest roster you've ever done. Because like it was a decree from on high, like the people in charge of Midway told them, the fans have been asking for another trilogy, make another MK trilogy. That was what they were told.
But it's like it was basically Smash Ultimate before Smash Ultimate.
Basically.
More or less.
Except on the biggest time crunch they've ever had. So that's the reason there weren't any bios. But just like the fact that we know Vogel is the one who wrote the website ones.
Yeah.
And he probably did it in his free time and for free. Suggests that he had a bigger investment in writing the story of the 3D era games than the other names in the credits did. Now,
the other, the backwards phrase "John Vogel is a genius."
Well, actually, Vogel wrote MK versus DC. That was all him, I think.
Yes, that is on him for the most part.
Well, here's the thing: MK versus DC also had writing from a
DC writer.
DC Comics writer Jimmy Palmiotti was brought in to make sure that the DC characters would sound like themselves and not like violate. Would not make like DC look bad or anything.
Comics Code Authority.
Yeah, someone should have done that for Zack Snyder.
Yeah, it would have helped. But we do know that like Brian Chard and Dom Cianciolo joined Midway during MK versus DC universe. Like Brian Chard started as the voice acting director. Yeah. And Dom started as the cinematics director, like the guy in charge of like, if you think of like a film director like Steven Spielberg, except for cutscenes.
Yeah. And well, I remember I was watching your MK versus DC playthrough. At the very end, when Dom's name shows up in the credits, I think Razor, you're the one who says, "Thanks, MK versus DC, for giving us Dom," and is bitingly sarcastic as possible.
Yeah.
I really do think that there's a reason that MK9 Cemetery is called St. Dominic's.
Yeah.
He definitely became influential in the writing very quickly. So like 9 had the 3D era guys were still on the team. Like Vogel, Greenberg, and Barentine are pretty much still in the credits, and Brian Chard and Dom. Yeah. So, and from interviews with Brian Chard, what we seem to be understanding is that John Vogel was no longer like the pen to the paper guy like he was in the 3D era. He had become the head of the writing department, so it was more like the other guys below him are the ones writing, and then they're handing it to him for a stamp of approval. Like he was basically their editor. Yeah. So most of the writing in 9 is Chard and some contributions from the guys below him, including Dom. And we know that MKX is pretty much the same deal. It's mostly all Chard and Dom. Brian Chard has taken credit specifically for Melina's backstory changes in 9. He's given Dom credit for the Tea Party scene between Scorpion and Sub-Zero in X.
I always found that funny because it's like, they're like Scorpion's like, it's like, why are we doing this outside in the freezing cold and drinking hot tea?
And it's worth mentioning that's my favorite scene in all of MKX.
It's a great job there. It's a great moment between Scorpion and Sub-Zero, but that scene also features Frost going, "It's wrong to make peace with the Shirai Ryu." And that becoming the core motivation for her betrayal of Sub-Zero in this timeline is that she hates the Shirai Ryu. But that doesn't make sense because Frost joined after the Shirai Ryu was already dead, and all of her training has been from Kuai Liang, who doesn't hate the Shirai Ryu.
I didn't say it was perfect. I'm just saying I like the Tea Party scene.
I'm
Well-
just saying, even in Dom's best work, there are signs of him not knowing what he's doing.
Well, like you said, I think the thing about Dom is that, like, the intros in Injustice 2 are noticeably inferior to the ones in Mortal Kombat X.
Yeah. They seem to have been like recording just individual lines that they could reuse and mix and match. Like, just have Kevin Conroy say, "I'm Batman," and we can have that be the third line of most of his intro.
But no, most of his is just him saying, "So it's been said."
Yeah, it's all very generic lines that could be the response to anything. Like, the opponent could say, like, "I'm in the mood for a ham and cheese sandwich," and fucking the response could be, "I'm Batman."
Yeah, that's another thing that always bugs me about the Injustice games, is that it really dips into Bat God territory, where Batman's just this like unbeatable god.
What
Well-
realm do you come from, mortal? I'm Batman.
That's the thing about a fighting game, especially the NRS ones, is that anybody can fight anybody. Like,
Well, yeah. Well, they actually came up with an in-universe justification for why they can fight Superman.
oh yeah, everybody has Kryptonian strength and durability because they've taken like nanite medicine.
Yeah. I should be dead. Thanks, Happy
I would
Joe.
like to know if there are any side effects to that. Like, what if can Brainiac take control of those nanites? Shouldn't he
No.
have tried?
I don't. It's been a while since I've played Injustice 2 story, but it's like I'll probably have to re-record it at some point. But it's like it's like, at least with Injustice 1, if you didn't like evil Superman, you had the good versions in the first game to balance it out.
yeah,
But
that
with
was
Injustice 2. You don't have that.
that was one of my problems. Is that like the Injustice was sort of the first game was founded on you get to fight the evil ones as the normal ones.
Yeah.
So I was disappointed that 2 was just the bad guy universe too.
I'm tired of the evil Superman trope. I really
Yeah.
am.
It's way played out now. I didn't
It's-
enjoy it when it started because
Yeah, that's
It's
where I'm-
absolutely everywhere. Like, I feel like we're in a place in terms of pop culture where
it's more.
it's been normalized. Like, we have to have movies about the Joker because movies about Batman aren't enough. It's like we have to follow the villains. We have to follow fallen heroes, and it's like it almost
No.
feels like as a society we've fucking
Well,
outgrown, or we want to
That's
believe we've
why
outgrown
James
the
Gunn,
traditional
please
hero's
save us
journey.
next year.
I'll tell you what, in terms of like social engineering and marketing, they have done an amazing job of creating a world where there are now more people saying, "I just want to see normal Superman," than there are that are saying Superman is boring.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why
That's the one thing they've done.
That's the thing I said that makes have another Injustice 3 happening a little shaky, because DC is actually trying to move away from what if Superman was evil, because they realize it's overdone, and Injustice's whole universe is that premise.
Yeah. And people are ready for some hope and sunshine because the world itself keeps getting worse.
Yeah.
I don't want to see the Joker in another movie unless I have a Joker-mobile. Okay, I'll put it that way.
I could do without the Jonkler. It's true.
Yeah.
So the thing is, like, talking about creative teams. So Brian Chard left at the end of MKX.
Because he
And he-
didn't like how they were like.
Well, yeah, on his way out, he gave an interview with Mortal Kombat Online where he said that one of the reasons he was leaving is that NetherRealm Studios was a very, like, the work environment was difficult to suggest, like, improvements in, because they were very,
Yes,
they didn't
man.
want to listen to criticism, and the people who were, like, just yes men were better at getting ahead in the company.
Yeah.
Which
That's why
he didn't name any names, but considering Dom Chiancholo directly took his job when he left.
Yeah.
So Injustice 2 was so after MKX came out, when MKX came out, they did the MKX comic book tie-in,
Yeah.
which was by Sean Kittleson, who was like an internal DC guy at the time. After the success of the comic book, NetherRealm Studios started hiring Kittleson. They didn't bring him on as a member of the
He
NetherRealm
was
team.
contract.
They were contracting him as a freelance writer. And so he and Dom, as a pair, wrote Injustice 2 and MK11. And then when Kittleson's contract expired, which was after he had created the Aftermath, after he'd written for those characters, but before those characters came out, his contract expired, and NetherRealm chose to not renew it, and just made Dom the sole writer. So Dom alone wrote the intro dialogues for like Melina, Rain, and Rambo.
Yeah.
And then he wrote MK12 all by himself, and the mobile game Mortal Kombat Onslaught,
Which
all by
died
himself.
very quickly, I might add.
Not only did it die quickly, Onslaught, I think, is the biggest emblematic. Like, if you want to see a greatest hits of all of Dom's weaknesses as a writer, so MK Onslaught is set in a universe all its own that vaguely takes place just after the MK1 tournament. Like, it's some combination of 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
But they don't tell you what has happened and what hasn't happened, so the timeline will never make sense.
Yeah.
And during the game, Kuai Liang is already the Grandmaster of the Lin Kuei and trading Frost, even though the Cyber Initiative hasn't happened yet. So she turns on him during what's basically supposed to be MK2 and 3, and she's in charge of the Cyber Initiative, and Sector's not in the game.
That's Dom. Dom likes to just take things from other characters and give them to someone else.
I want you to
also
envision a cell phone game.
Here's another one. Here's another thing. Shiva is the queen of the Shokan in Onslaught, even though Goro's still around. So, like, she's the queen and he's the prince, and they're not related to each other.
I want you to envision a cell phone game. And you play as Mega Man. And your enemies are Gemini Man, Storm Eagle, let's see now. Vile is selectable. Gutsman's ass.
Just his ass, not the rest of him.
Just his ass. Old schoolers will know what I'm talking about. I don't know, 15 enemies from the Zero games.
Yep.
The end boss of Mega Man Legends. This is what Mortal Kombat Onslaught is.
Yeah.
It is a greatest hits product designed to throw a bunch of references at you and go, I remember that. I'll pay $5.95 to keep on going and up my stats. It is crap, and I have to believe that even Dom Chiancolo knows it's crap. And he to play devil's advocate, he's probably working to some degree on what he's been given. You know, what he's been given.
Onslaught is largely made out of reused assets from 11 and 12. But
I'm just saying, I wouldn't want to be the guy that got saddled with the task of make Drawman's mask a part of this, you know?
Yeah, that's a weird thing. So there's a plot point where they say the show can have Drawman's mask as a trophy because Goro killed Drawman in a fight several hundred years ago.
Oh God.
So Shinnok needs Drawman's mask back for magic reasons, and so they send Scorpion to get it. And when Scorpion gets the mask, he sees like a vision of himself telling him, like his own ghost pops out of the mask to tell him, I'm a portion of your soul that's been stolen from you. I'm your memories of what really happened when your clan died. Quan Chi's the one who did it. So like Quan Chi gave Drawman a portion of your soul as a gift. But Drawman died several hundred years ago. You just said that. He died before Scorpion was born. How could that happen?
That reminds me. It's like, well, you know how if like in MK12, like, we find out that Liu Kang did try to get down, Hector. Now, get down. Sorry. But like at the beginning, the intro, Liu Kang says, "Oh, I can only begin the endeavor." But then it's like, oh no, wait, you did try to alter people's things.
Oh yeah. Liu Kang in 12 constantly says, I didn't choose anybody's destinies for them. I didn't make them this way. I gave them freedom of choice. And then he also says, I changed Havoc so he wouldn't be like that.
Yeah, that's just. I just chalked it up to Dom being inconsistent with his own stuff.
Oh yeah, Dominic Cianciolo reminds me of Brian Michael Bendis. Like if you're a Marvel Comics reader and you were reading during like the 2000s when Bendis was very popular and was writing Ultimate Spider-Man and all of the Avengers books.
Yeah.
The one thing that Bendis is most famous for is that he can't remember his own continuity and was constantly changing details from his own stories. Not even like retconning past stories that he wasn't a part of. He just couldn't remember his own shit.
And each of the panels contains 21 word bubbles. You try to remember everything you've done.
But like even if you're like, you're writing a shitty mobile game and you're not trying that hard, I just want to. So the end of Onslaught, like the final cutscene, is Raiden fighting Shinnok, and Raiden like steals the amulet and becomes Dark Raiden. Like the amulet is the corrupting influence. Like that's what makes him dark.
Except that was never the case.
Yeah, it's an 11 thing they're reusing, like the idea that it's the one ring and it fucking tempts him. That happens at 11. So they're reusing that in Onslaught. So Raiden takes the amulet anyway, like he goes dark because that's the only weapon he can like to get an advantage over Shinnok and beat him. But immediately after he like chops all of Shinnok's arms and legs off and wins the fight, he just goes, and then I will purge the evil from out of myself and return to normal. I'm done with this. It's that easy.
Oh, Dom. Well, anyway, that's the other thing that I think the hate for Dom, it started when he started to say that, the Titans are above the one being when, it's like you can't really be above something that's all of existence. And
and now there are no Titans except for multiverse versions of the NetherKast. Those are the Titans now.
Yeah, and and this is also the thing that I think really started the Dom hate when he just insisted the Sindel retcon was a good change.
Oh yeah, Dom has a personal stake in like he doesn't like.
Oh, I think he's very bitter. People didn't like that.
Well, the thing is that the reason he made the change is that he has like a personal distaste for anything that quote unquote glorifies suicide.
Wow.
And so like it's kind of like a social justice-y thing where he's trying to like sanitize Sindel's part of her backstory. Like he doesn't want the idea that she was forced to marry Shao Kahn. He doesn't want the idea that she killed herself and abandoned her daughter in the hands of like a bad person. He thinks that like makes her like he doesn't like those character traits.
Yeah.
So those are the ones that he changed. And that's why he's bitter that people want it back the way it was.
Yeah. Because it's like Sindel overcame all that.
Yeah, the whole point is that like first of all, to say that like a person is a bad mother because they went mad and threw themselves out a window as a result of domestic abuse, like that makes you a bad mom that you couldn't take it. That's really insensitive.
Oh yeah, that's like
she was not in her right mind when she killed herself.
Yeah, there are real world people who are victims of domestic abuse, and there are real world people who are victims of mental illness, and sometimes they kill themselves, and you should show some fucking sympathy, man.
Yeah, and also it's like
I really love the part in MK11 where you have fucking Fujin getting all up on a soapbox about how bad and wrong suicide is as he looks at all these monks, which never worked for fucking Shang Tsung. Where are you?
That's another thing. They saw the courtyard and they're like, where do those monks come from? Because isn't this Shang Tsung's courtyard? I guess they must work for Shang. No, the Shaolin went to watch the tournament. It's an audience.
They never fucking read the MK1 comic book. You know what? You can bandy about it all fucking you like, but like MK11, Sindel, and Shao Kahn, it really feels like a trial run for everything that was to be done with 12, and I maintain that, and that's in a way I wanted them to do this. I wanted them to just say, "This is what we want to do now," so I can watch the fucking tumbleweeds blow by.
Hector, get down.
It's as simple as that, you know.
Fucking cat.
Yeah. Sorry, he's
Yeah, I can sort of understand the desire to be like, well, instead of constantly changing the past, why don't you just start over and show us what you wanted to do all along?
well.
But now that they've exposed themselves, this is the real us. This is the kind of stories we want to write if we weren't beholden to past universes. Boy, do I not like this universe.
Yeah,
Well-
it's half the reason. I cherish this freedom. I'm glad that like we have severed ourselves from the past, and this is what's on the menu, so I can say no thanks. Check, please.
Yeah.
I understand that, but I also, deeply have the impulse to please give me a Mortal Kombat game that I would enjoy.
That's nice. I would like that too. That would be
And it's
wonderful.
not just the story stuff. Like, first of all, I think all the costumes look like they were designed in AI. Like they've never been more generic fantasy noise than they are in this game. Everything is just a mess of cloth tucked into other cloth and strapped over top of things, and there's little twisty metal bits that's sort of just kind of hot glued everywhere, and it looks like a human being who has creativity is not what came up with it.
How does Natara sit down without gashing her thighs open?
And then the other thing, like, people keep telling me, yeah, but even if you don't like the story, like, the gameplay is fun, the multiplayer, like, we're enjoying playing it competitively. Like, that's the defense that the people who do like the game keep giving. And my response to that is Sector doesn't have a teleport punch.
You'll fucking play anything.
Mortal Kombat characters have certain iconic moves that should be there every time, and they started doing this thing, and you can go all the way back to
X. You can go back to X.
You can go back to X. I think, like, Sonya started morphing into, like, she used to be like this acrobatic gymnastics person who did, like, she has the leg grab and the square wave punch and ring toss. In MKX, she still has those moves, but her normals are starting to morph into, like, MMA ground and pound, and she keeps getting these robot drones that shoot you with a gun.
Yeah.
When you get to 11, she doesn't even have the leg grab anymore, man. Like, she does that move in the 95 movie. It's her most famous move. Like, you could debate which is more famous between that and the pink rings, but you shouldn't have to.
Or
you should have them both, man.
I mean, that's... this is why I kind of tend to say that, like, yeah, it would be nice if we would have a Mortal Kombat game that we love, but I feel like where we are now in terms of producing games, plus what, like, the writers want, what WB expects, there's too much that, like, we can't fucking get back. Special moves are one thing, story, atmosphere. We're never gonna get a fucking crypt that worked the way that crypts used to work ever again. You're gonna have shrines from now on.
Yeah, there's always got to be something that you can gamble coins at to get random skins.
Like, I truly, really feel like the experience of past MK games is not a thing we can do anymore. It won't sell enough, or whatever the shit. Like, it would take some sort of fucking black magic to put all the ingredients back into the cauldron,
Yeah.
I just don't think it can actually ever happen again, and I'd love to be proved wrong. I truly would.
Yeah, there are monetization tactics that, like, all across gaming, that it's very difficult to not have in a game, and they are intrusive, and they do make the gameplay worse.
It's too much, man. Monetization, story, character designs.
Yep. Well, actually, what you were saying about the moveset, like with Katana, I noticed that in MKX and MK11, she had moves from Jade or Melina, whoever wasn't in one of those games. Like,
well, yeah, that's actually a problem that's been going on. That's an issue that they've had going back to the arcade games, where they've always felt really comfortable transplanting moves from one character to a different character because character A isn't in the game and character B is. And it kind of starts with Shiva a little bit,
They used to be a little more clever with it. Like, Johnny Cage isn't in the game, but we like his arcing projectiles, so Stryker does it with grenades. Like, at least that's graphically different.
Yeah, Noob
Yeah.
Saibot and like Reiko being swapped around, so they just kind of
But yeah.
transplanted the moves from one character to another.
Jarek's
not-
existence, Kira's existence.
Their existence? This is not new. This is not new at all. It's just gotten more egregious with time.
Yeah, so with MK11, it basically ends with you know, the whole universe having to be reset again, and it's like I guess they were always going to go with the normal ending being the canon one, but I'm like, I always look back on that because it's like you know, there's two endings with that, well, three endings with the original MK11. One where Liu Kang's with Katana, one where he's with Raiden, one where he dies. Like at the beginning of Aftermath, like, you know, they go with the, you know, the normal ending with the one with Raiden. But I was always like, I always thought that was odd because, like, you know, if you basically switch Katana with Raiden in that cutscene, I don't think much changes, honestly.
Well, what changes is that in 12 we wouldn't have that tired shit where, oh, we can never be together. We're always separated by fate in some way. That
Yeah, I
dialogue
know.
between
It's like
Titan
that's
Lu
why
and Titan Katana.
it was like, okay, finally we did away with that. It's like it's done. They're together.
Kind of feel like, yeah, people are kind of tired of that.
And then it's like, well, MK11 ends with a whole reboot, and I think Aftermath basically ends with like Liu Kang, I think, going to visit the Great Kung Lao, and that
Yeah.
seems to be the tease. But it's like, of course, they did nothing with that. Like, it's like, oh no Great Kung Lao game.
I don't think
Yeah,
that was ever
that
intended
was-
to be anything but like a, hey, look at that, gotcha.
Yeah, I
moment.
think that was always meant to just be like a wink and a nod to the fans. You know who this character is. They were never going to make a sequel that wasn't set in the present day.
Yeah,
People have been talking about having a Great Kung Lao era game for like decades and decades. It's not gonna happen.
If you do it, then you can't have Johnny, Sonya, Jax. You'd have to have a different guy be Scorpion, which I guess they don't have a problem with.
You can have a Takeda.
you could have an ancestor
old
of Sub-Zero.
Yeah, yeah. Different guy is Sub-Zero. Different guy like
Sub-First.
you can have most of the Outworld characters because they don't like they age different. So Katana and Melina could totally be there. Shang Tsung would be there. Quan Chi would be there. But like most, a big chunk of the Earth cast would not be available to you if you
Because
did a
they
game
wouldn't be
set in Great
bored.
Kung Lao's time.
Yeah.
And you'd have to like introduce, I think. So I would say that the most new characters per game is usually ever been 8. Like there are 8 new characters in Deception. There are 8 new characters in MKX. I can't remember how many are in Deadly Alliance, but I bet it's around 8 or less. So yeah, they usually don't go bigger than that with introducing like new characters. And I think you'd have to do that with a Great Kung Lao thing. And then you'd have people who are like, where are Taja and Zero? Why aren't they in it?
Yeah, I actually watched that show for all the way through for the first time. That show had some weird stuff, like Scorpion becomes who he is because he's bitten by a scorpion. I was like,
It takes
Yeah,
a lot of liberties, and we can look back on them and smile and nod.
yeah.
But it also does a lot of cool things too.
Yeah, it ends with everyone dying, but you know they were supposed to get another season, which they didn't get. So
I actually wonder. Warner Brothers does own the rights to like the movies and TV show, right? So
yeah,
if they wanted to make like Art Lean a canon character, they could do that, or would they owe somebody royalties?
I don't know. As long as they don't make Cole Young a character, I'm good.
Oh, can we just sidestep that entire conversation? I don't want to fucking talk about that movie. And I'm hungry. I have to eat.
All right, we'll wrap this up in a few minutes.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, we'll just close out with some finishing thoughts. Yeah, with MK11, it ends with a whole big reboot again because it's like, well, you know, maybe if you hadn't made some of those mistakes at MK9, you wouldn't have had to reboot again 2 games later.
Yeah, it's almost like
You can't build a house on a bad foundation.
And yeah, actually,
it's something of a catchphrase of mine over the past 15
yeah,
years.
actually, that's why I think that Ray movie is doomed no matter what, even if it gets made. It's like you can't build a house on a bad foundation. You know,
What movie?
the Rey movie they want to make for Star Wars. That's after Episode 9 out. That's why I'm like,
Oh yeah.
I think that movie's doomed no matter what because, like you said, you can't build a house on a bad foundation.
I think that one's just gonna suffer from how many people are interested in that character and will actually go see that.
I think that Disney is just now like in the process of trying to pretend that they haven't touched the franchise for a couple of years. Like you
Even-
saw how quickly they like deleted everything regarding the Acolyte. They're like, they know they've done some fucking damage. They're in panic control mode now. That shit's not happening.
Yeah.
The problem is, even when they come out of panic control mode, a lot of the head creatives are still going to be in the same positions. Like that's the point I try to make when I talk about, if you want to know why the writing in something has taken a downturn, look at who the writers are. Like, who is the creative team responsible?
Like you said with 343 Studios and Halo.
Yeah, if you want something to change, if you want it to get better, you have to change the people at the top who have made these decisions.
You know what, though? I'm going to be optimistic, cautiously optimistic. Sometimes bad shit has to happen for it to get better. And I like to think that right now we're kind of in the wilderness years. That we're in the Batman is in space meeting Batmite era of Mortal Kombat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that I'd like to think that eventually, maybe not next game, who knows, we're gonna eventually get back to that point where MK will look and feel like MK again. Will it be everything I want? Probably not. Maybe there'll be some secret characters. That's all I can ask.
Yeah.
I worry that we're in some too big to fail situation where like MK12 didn't sell as well as 11 and X to my understanding. Like it's definitely like getting more criticism online and stuff.
Yeah.
But is it enough more? Like how much of a hit have they taken? Isn't it still just a very successful fighting game? Like, is it enough for them to care?
I don't know. Well, here's the other
find out.
Well, here's the thing. Well, with the new movie next year, which is we'll see what the fallout from that is. Because they're making a sequel next year. They've already filmed.
They've made the sequel. The sequels like have had test screenings. There are spoilers out there and everything.
Yeah, I heard. I'm like, this doesn't really give me much hope. From what I've read about
it. It at the very least shows that they know nobody likes Cole.
Oh yeah, like his power was literally plot armor.
Well, my understanding is that his armor cannot save him from what happens to him, and it happens to him very early in the movie.
So it's like Johnny Cage in Annihilation, basically.
Basically.
Yeah, I always thought that was funny. It was like,
guys, I think we're being very careful with these spoilers.
Yeah.
Your listeners will not know what is about to happen.
The spoilers are out there, all right? That people have been to test screenings and they've said what happens in the movie.
Yeah.
Cole dies somehow, and he dies very quickly. Let's leave it at that.
And no one cares.
Yeah. No one in the movie cares. None of the audience. The audience cheered from what I've heard of the test screenings.
Oh man, I'm still not going to pay money to go see the damn thing.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Well,
there are other things too.
Yeah, I didn't buy Chaos Reigns because I got better things to spend my money on. Like I just watched the cutscenes on YouTube. I just remember the one scene that I thought was so stupid was when Emperor Rain and Empress Tanya basically say their goodbyes, and I'm like, am I supposed to care?
Yeah, like that's the problem with devoting screen time to like multiverse versions of characters that we've just met, and then trying to wring some emotion out of it.
Yeah. Also,
I have still not played Chaos Reigns. I will never play Chaos Reigns. I uninstalled Mortal Kombat 12 from my PS5 1 week after release, and I do not know what the hell you people are talking about.
Well, no, there's this scene where like,
I don't care. You don't have to tell me. I don't care. Let's keep going.
Okay. Okay. We'll just I guess closing thoughts. What do you guys think has got NetherRealm into this situation? Just sum it all up.
Arrogance.
Yeah.
Thinking you're too big to fail.
Yes, man. Attitude.
I would say boredom. Because
Boredom
I'm
is a
thinking
huge
of
factor,
Ed
too.
specifically. Obviously, Ed's the guy at the top who okays things. He can say yes or no to these things. And he always says yes, because he's been there working on this one thing for so long that all he wants is some kind of novelty, some kind of shakeup to keep him interested.
And he'll just see whatever popular movie's out, and he'll go, okay, I want to do that.
Yeah.
Failure to recognize when you've already crafted something beautiful. And a failure to recognize when it's time to stop cribbing off other things and accept the thing you've made.
There is
The
that.
thing of
Like,
beauty.
the whole reason that I'm here is because the original timeline, 1 to Armageddon, I mean, it had some. It was made up as it went, so there's some fuzzy parts that had to be filled in with retcons.
Yeah.
But what the end result is, for me, one of the best stories that I've experienced in fiction, and I'll put it up against anything that is like beloved by large numbers of people, like Star Wars or Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or whatever you think is like the greatest work of fiction that you've experienced in your life. For me, that's what Mortal Kombat was. So
Yeah, I loved reading
when
before.
you reboot it and you make it worse, and you reboot it again and you make it worse, like what? I feel like you're telling me to get lost.
Yeah.
We are not the target audience for this game, and we have not been the target audience for probably
It's
well
true.
over a decade now.
I have aged out of the what Hollywood considers the core demographic anyway. I'm not 18 to 35 anymore.
Yeah.
I began to understand that I was getting too old to be considered a target for this when I walked into a fucking HMV back when MK9 came out, and I saw the songs inspired by the Warriors CD, and I went, oh wow, just like Mortal Kombat, the album when I was a little boy. This should be cool.
Oh,
Wow,
yeah.
this fucking sucks, and I hate what the kids are
That
listening
that
to.
MK9
I'm
album
fucking
was
old.
all dubstep. Yeah,
Yep.
that was
We have
definitely
not been the
not for
target
me.
for some time.
Oh, yeah. Well, John Tobias, I think, said something where he's like, MK, like any pop culture thing, goes through highs and lows. So, it's in a rough spot, but hopefully we'll get to a better spot.
I don't know if I have yet to see a pop culture franchise that's hit a low come back. Maybe Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Yeah.
But most of them just keep digging. Like, I guess if you're like super knowledgeable about the history of comic books, you can point to like times when X character was down and then they were up and then they were down and they were up. But like during the course of my life, they were never more up than when I was like a kid in the 90s. And like Spider-Man from the 90s to now has been a steady slope down. There haven't been highs and lows. There've only been lows.
Oh, yeah. Well, it all exponentiated with one more day.
I would trace it back to the Clone Saga.
Well, yeah, but one more day was that bad.
Yeah.
Have you ever read the entire Clone Saga? I don't know what's worse.
I just remember the Clone Saga was supposed to only be a few months, but because it was selling so good, they extended it by a couple years.
Yeah, it was like it would have been 6 issues and they made it 2 years.
You can hack off entire miniseries out of the Clone Saga and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it wasn't just 2 years. It was 2 years across 3 different books.
And it all ended with everything just back to normal, so nothing was accomplished.
If you ever want to have fun, look up who Judas Traveler was. It's absolutely amazing.
Oh,
no one fucking
man.
knows.
I think one
Nobody.
of their plans was to have Mephisto fix everything, but then they were like, no, Mephisto doesn't belong in Spider-Man.
Imagine thinking that.
Oh my god.
All right, well, I guess we'll wrap it up. Thanks for joining me. It was fun.
Thank you for having us. I've had a good time.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll probably do this again sometime soon. Whatever we have something to discuss.
Let's talk about good things.
Yeah.
I'm so
Okay.
freaking tired of talking about all the fucking ways the last couple of MK games have let me down.
Actually, we could
I-
talk about we could talk about the good stuff, the lore from the Midway games. We could do that.
I would love if we could do that.
All right.
But man, you know what? I'm out
You know,
there. I was out there today at lunch, and I was listening to the fucking Annihilation soundtrack out of all things. And it doesn't matter that the movie is terrible. I just have good memories attached to it, so I can enjoy it. You know?
I mean that soundtrack was the first. I don't know if that or the Immortals CD were the first CDs I bought with my own money. It was one of those two.
I'm saying Annihilation score, not soundtrack.
Oh, the
The
score.
instrumental shit. It's not they only ever released an MP3 form on the website.
I mean, those are good too.
They are.
But that, like, most of my tastes in music were formed by that the soundtrack album. You had Rammstein and Megadeth on there. And...
Oh, I could talk about. I mean, same thing, man. Because so many bands I am into now are a direct result of the MK95 soundtrack and the Street Fighter II the animated movie soundtrack.
Oh yeah.
Alice in Chains.
All right. Well, I think I'll get going. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having
Glad
us.
to be here.
No problem.
Have a nice day.
Have a nice night.